moving forward from the underpainting of this vase and flower, I've decided, since I'm using a very smooth surface, that I'm going to do this image using a glaze. So a glazing technique, meaning that I'm going to put several layers of paint on, and I'm going to go from lean to fat. Lean is what I already have put on with the paint, was paint mixed with mineral spirits directly, and put on a very thin layer of the paint. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my mineral spirits and just a little bit of oil added to it, and I'm going to now glaze a layer of paint on top of that. So what I'm going to be doing in the glazing process is adding a layer, letting it dry, coming back and adding another layer. And I use this a lot, particularly for portrait painting. And what it allows me to do is to continually adjust those hues, and I get a very brilliant refraction of light through those layers. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the background, and I've decided that I see in this background a blue violet. So I'm going to work with that. I'm going to start in here. Now see, this is pretty thin still. See that? It's going on relatively thin. I already have a layer of paint on there, but I'm gonna add this layer, and I may make it just a little bit thicker. I don't have to, but I may want to as I'm working on this, because I don't, at this point, I want to start building up my layers. So right now in this area, I am looking for a mid-tone. And I'm also starting on the background because it's behind the bottle and behind the flower. And so when I come in and paint the flower, I want it to be on top of what I've already put down. Now it looks like I'm just adding one value. I am at the moment, but I'm going to come back in and add a little bit darker value where I see dark. And I have pre-mixed. The hue I'm using is an ultramarine and cadmium red deep mixture. In order to lighten the value, I add a little white. But I want this right in here to be pretty dark. So I'm going to go ahead and add this way. And I know you can see my brush strokes. That's okay as well. The more layers I get, the more those strokes will be covered. Now the thing is, the beauty of oil painting also is that brush strokes show up. And that's an important aspect of the oil painting, to know that it is an oil painting, not a photograph, that somebody's hand was used in creating that painting. And look, I'm just putting it on very loosely still, because this is still one of my lower layers. Notice how I'm overlapping that flower quite a bit, because this wall is definitely behind this flower. And I'm going to come around this stem. And I want this a little lighter up here, so maybe I'm going to come in with a lighter, a little bit of light added, white added to it. So I'm up here. Alright, so now over here, I think I want this lighter value right at or mid value actually is what it's going to be at the base here. As I come up, I'm using a flat brush. I think this is about a 1/2 inch flat. There's a lot of paint to put on here, and so I want to be able to get it on there relatively easily. Now, I'm not going to make this window frame that as a window frame. I'm just going to use a lighter value as I come up. And I'm going to come up next to this. So I have to remember to talk to you while I'm doing this. Again, come in behind that flower quite a bit. I want to leave that light there on the bottle. And lighter up here. A little more medium. A little more. So this is a mixture of mineral spirits and oil. How much? Maybe about half mineral spirits, half oil. See, I want this to be lighter along here, but I don't want it. And yeah, I'm scrubbing at this point because this paint is really thin and I can really move it around quite a bit. So at this, and this type of application where I'm putting it on pretty thinly will allow you to do that. When the paint gets thicker, that becomes a much more of a challenge. The paint doesn't move that around real well when it's much thicker. So how do I like that for my first layer? Might want to make this a tad darker over in here. One of the things that all of us artists tend to do is we tend to go easy on our darks, meaning that we don't usually get our darks dark enough. And what a painting really does rely on is that contrast in value to make things pop and show up for you. So I'm going to put this in here. This is a shadow behind the flower. And I think, so now I've got my background in pretty much kind of in the value range that I want. And I've kind of come behind that flower a little bit. I might add a little bit of dark up here to indicate that shadow. But I know that I'm going to come in and I'm going to do much more. It was kind of rounded off right there, so I wanted to kind of square it up. I'm going to do much more, but I've got that first layer in. Now I'll go ahead and proceed doing the same thing with my flower and my bottle. But this will help you have a real clear picture of how to get started with the glazing. So we'll see more as I come back and we develop it a little bit more.